Particularly in the last 150 years, we've had a lot of apparitions. Knows about Fatima from 1917. You had Kibiho, like they mentioned, in 1981. They didn't mention Garbandal in 1967, which wasn't yet approved. Akita, Japan in 1973, and then 1981 Medjugorje. The difference between most of those apparitions is the intensity of the Medjugorje apparitions. Fatima, you had about 6 apparitions. Kibiho, you maybe had 20 maybe. You had in Akita, Japan, same thing, maybe 6 or 7, which is actually one of the criticisms about Medjugorje was, and I'll ask you guys when you're done what you've heard about Medjugorje in terms of criticisms. But the children, which were children back in June 25th of 1981, after about the 3rd or 4th day, they'd never heard about Fatima or any of the other apparitions at that time. When they heard about them, they heard that there were 6 apparitions in Fatima, whatever else, and some of the criticism they've had is because they said among each other, well, it'll probably last a couple more days because they wouldn't expect there'd be more than there was in Fatima. Never did they expect they'd be going on every single day for the next 40 years. That's unheard of in terms of the frequency of an apparition. But people used that against them and said, oh, yeah, first they tell us you're going to come to an end, then they don't come to an end. That's not what they said. That's not fair criticism. They were just wondering because they were comparing it to Fatima. So if you hear that kind of criticism like they were going to stop, no, that's a falsehood. In any case, Medjugorje is the finality. The Virgin Mary says this is the last of the apparitions. There's not going to be more Kibiho. There's not going to be more Fatima. This is the end of the apparitions. This is the end, which people say, of the age. This is the end of the age. So Medjugorje, because they occur every single day at 6:40, you can study them. So in Fatima in 1917, you didn't have EEGs or other ways, CT scans and other things to study people medically. They just didn't exist. But by 1981, they certainly do exist. So since the apparitions were happening at a specific time at 6:40, they got sent. Initially, they were sent to psychiatrists in Chitlik, which is a small town. About 3 or 4 days into it, they sent them to psychiatrists thinking they're crazy. Same thing, more psychiatrists in 81. But the most comprehensive studies that were done by a guy named Dr. Henry Giraud, who was an atheist from Montpellier, France. And he came in with 4 other doctors. He came in with an ENT, he came in with an ophthalmologist, he came with an electrical engineer and stuff as well to perform more sophisticated testing. Because to the atheists, of course, there is no scientific evidence of God. But what I always said to my atheist friends is that you're aware of. There's plenty of evidence, but you're not aware of that evidence. So I'll give you some of that evidence today, what happened in 1984 with Henry Giraud. So the physiological responses that occur to these children, which are now adults, are phenomenal, to be honest. They're just phenomenal. So the normal apparition that you would see back in Fatima, which normal apparition, that's kind of an oxymoron. But in all those, if you ever see the videos of them, whether it's Garbando, they lock their eyes on something. And same thing in Fatima as well. They're locked on something. Any pictures you see of any of the apparitions for the last 100 years are always like that. That's kind of one of the sine qua non, if it's really an apparition, is you'll see the person going into a trance-like state. They knew that in Fatima, they knew that in all the places, but now in Medjugorje you can study it. So they start the apparition, they start by saying Our Father and stuff, and within a few minutes or so, they all simultaneously fall to their feet and they lock on a dot. And this is the impossibility in the science of it. No matter how they're arranged, the 5 or 6 of them, they will knock on a dot that is only 2 by 2 centimeters. And their visual gaze will not leave that dot for the exact amount of time. Whether it's 3 minutes, 10 minutes and 47 seconds, 45 seconds, all 5 of them, or there's 6 of them originally within a year or two, Marjana didn't have them, but all 5 of them, by the time they're doing the studies in 1984, they lock in that dot to the exact millisecond. No one can do that. No one can lock on any dot in space 2 by 2 centimeters for any period of time. No human can do that. But they do it simultaneously, every single day, every single time for 40 years. How is that possible? It's not possible. So within 0.4 milliseconds, they lock on the dot. Our brains, when we're processing visual information, we're kind of in a beta rhythm in our mind. When you go into a meditative state, or if you're praying and contemplative, you'll go into an alpha rhythm. So within about 300 milliseconds, as soon as they fall to their knees, they lock on that dot, they all go into alpha rhythm spontaneously together. Always the same. The thing about these apparitions that makes them so scientifically, implausible, is that the synchronicity, that they do it exactly the same every single time simultaneously. No two people can do something simultaneously. How do all 5 of them do it the same for every year for 40,000 times? How? That's impossible. So the 6 probably physiological things are probably most important is, again, 1, within 0.2 milliseconds, they're locked on 2 by 2 centimeter decks. 2, they stay on that dot to the exact milliseconds. 3, they go into alpha rhythm simultaneously as the apparition occurs. 4, they're decerebrate from the environment. That during the apparition, Henry Giraud and the stuff would burn them, prick them, stab them, do all sorts of things to try to get them to move. They will not move, no matter. They're desensitized. So when they measure in their ears, they would put a 100 decibel thing in Ivan's ear and stuff too. It would register in the inner ear, but doesn't ever register in the cortex. That's impossible. So they asked Ivan after they do the decibels, did you hear anything the apparition? No, I heard nothing. Did you feel anything when you were stabbed? No, we didn't feel anything. So they're decerebrate completely from the environment for the exact milliseconds simultaneously. Now they will have burns in their bodies and stabs and blood coming out from the pricking and stuff as well, but they're completely decerebrate. So when the Blessed Mother appears, they respond to nothing except for that dot. So the visual gaze is locked on there. They go into alpha rhythms. They're decerebrate from the environment. They're dephonate, which means that during the apparition, when they go in, their lips will still move. They will videotape them moving, and they're all locked in the dot. But the larynx doesn't squeeze. They can measure the muscular contraction of the larynx. There is no squeezing. There is before, but then during the thing, they're dephonate. So, and then if you separate them afterwards, they can hear each other. How can they hear each other when people are videotaping them and can't hear anything? Unbelievable. So that's what Henry Giraud did in 1984, said this is inexplicable. It is beyond an understanding. It is unquestionably supernatural. Supernatural just means that we have no scientific evidence for it. And the visual gazes, all this stuff, are inexplicable. They've also ruled out any deception. They ruled out because they did psychiatric study. They even put them under hypnosis to see if maybe there's some sort of hypnosis. They ruled that out as well. And even under hypnosis, they're the same. Different in hypnosis is your heart rate really slows down parasympathetically. When you have an ecstasy, which they're having, your heart rate actually picks up. So the consistency as well, that through 40,000 times, you know how many times they could have made a mistake? 40,000 times. You know how many times they made a mistake? 0. 0. There is no question whether this is scientifically supernatural. Let's take out the theology. There's no doubt. A lot of people are afraid scientifically to say something so definitive because they're afraid if it's a fraud, they'd be, their reputation would be. There is no. When I went to my atheist friends, I said, you have to explain all of this. Not just one time that it happened. There is no other time in history any body has acted like this, except for Fatima, which we couldn't measure, or some of the other apparitions. No other time. There's no Muslims' ecstasies. There's no atheist ecstasies. There's none of these other. It is only in this circumstance, ever. How can that be? It can't be. It is obviously supernatural. The church, in its opinion, and looking at the scientific opinion, and again, I say it's a little bit weak because the conference, so how it originally started is local bishops usually decided whether an apparition was valid or not. Okay, whether it's back to Akita, Japan, Fatima, wherever it was. That was for practical speaking for 2,000 years. There wasn't any way to fly around the world 2,000 years ago. Now, obviously, you couldn't do that, but the local bishop determined it. So the local bishop at the time was a guy named Bishop Perrick. And Bishop Perrick has gone on the record saying there's nothing supernatural going on there. Well, I have a problem with that because I know he's got no medical experience. He doesn't understand an algorithm and stuff as well as, and there is no question that this is supernatural. Even the atheists know that. Even Henry Giraud, who's an atheist, knew that. Even Louis Frigero, who's another guy, came in 1985. Frigero came in from Milan, Italy, did the same studies. He questioned whether Giraud did the studies adequately. He got exactly all the same results. And says again, it is supernatural. It's not to our understanding. So when people kick around and stuff and say, oh, this had said it wasn't supernatural, this cardinal says it was supernatural and stuff, it's nonsense. It is 100% supernatural. Beyond even all the atheist scientists know that. Now, would Stephen Hawkins ever debate me about this? No, they don't know. They have no idea about the algorithms. They have no idea about the visual gaze. They have no idea about the dephonate. They have no idea about the decortical. They don't know. The local bishop, though, was against it from the beginning, and it goes to some sort of politics here. So Zanuck So back in the 80s, Pope Pius X in Croatia, there had been 73 dioceses, okay? It was run by the Franciscans. The Franciscans were run about 60 of the 73 dioceses. But Pope Leo wanted to bring it underneath the diocesan priest with the bishop in charge of it. The Franciscans really were resisting that. This was started in 1885. So by 1980s, they had switched over maybe, I think the Franciscans were still in charge of 30 of the parishes, and the other 53 were controlled by the diocesan priests, of which Bishop Zanuck was the head of that. And when the Virgin Mary appeared in the first few days, the Franciscans were obviously resisting having the parishes moved under the dioceses. When they appeared the first few days, and the fourth day, the three of the visionaries said, because it got to the bishop within 3 or 4 days, that the Virgin Mary favored the Franciscans being in charge of the apparitions and the stuff too. Zanuck then said, well, this can't be true, because why would the Virgin Mary pick one consecrated soul over the other? That is the entire basis of Zanuck's view upon the Medjugorje. Never met with the visionaries, never had any real investigation done, to the visionaries itself. So for a long time, the position in the Bishop of Mostar, which was Zanuck, and Peric was negative on it, although they had no things. Now, there's a story about Zanuck, and I'm going to make a point here. I'm pretty sure Zanuck, it might have been Peric, and I don't have the evidence of there. But the story is this, is that they interviewed Bishop Zanuck and said, Bishop, what would you like to see happen in Medjugorje? This is several years into the apparitions. He said, I would like to see Medjugorje absolutely destroyed. And the person said to him, oh my gosh, Bishop, that's awfully violent. Have you considered, what if the Blessed Mother is truly appearing there? And you are doing this to destroy her work? What would be the consequences? He said, I would be then condemned to the lowest level of hell for what I'm doing. Then why not be more prudent, Bishop, and do this? So I'm giving the ideas of the politics of it and how dangerous it is to reject things. It reminds me again, when Peter and James and John were teaching after Christ had died, they were teaching in the streets and stuff, and they were arrested, because the Pharisees wanted to destroy Christianity. And there was a very smart a rabbi named Gamaliel, and Gamaliel said to them in counseling the Pharisees, he said, if this is not of God, it will go its own way and it will deteriorate and be nothing to it. But if it is of God, you may find yourself, gentlemen, opposing God. This is what I'm trying to tell people about Medjugorje, the consecrated souls. If it is not of God and the Virgin Mary, it will fall into nothingness. If it is, you may find yourself working against the Blessed Mother. Be very careful. You should say be neutral, because you don't know. It's similar. People have different ideas. In Jesus' time, the Pharisees and the Sadducees had an idea of what the Messiah would be. He would be a ruler. He'd be a powerful military man. He would get rid of the yoke of the Romans. He would come and save them in that manner. When Jesus came, not in a way they thought he should come, he couldn't be the Messiah. That guy from Galilee couldn't possibly be the Messiah. We're geniuses. We're Pharisees of the book. We know it's coming. The same thing's true of your mother. Your mother's appearing in Medjugorje, and people are missing the visit. The same people that said they wouldn't have missed the visit when Jesus came, same people that are missing the visit when the Blessed Mother's coming. And it's very important. She says this is the last time. The reason she's been coming so much, it's an urgent message from Fatima. It's saying if mankind does not change, there's terrible chastisements coming to the planet. This was in Fatima 1917. She said back then, if Russia is not consecrated to my Immaculate Heart, it will spread its air of communism, Freemason throughout the world, and there'll be terrible wars. But in the end, she says, Russia will glorify God the most. You now have a war in Ukraine and Russia, so everyone's known the ratchet on which this would happen is somewhere involved in Russia. So with what's going on in your world today, everyone recognizes is the intensity of evil in the planet. You have World War III occurring already in Russia, Iran, Israel, etc. You're having the West become more decadent. We're talking about abortion through 9 months, taking a baby and sacrificing 9 months. The West is moving too. So the Blessed Mother is asking her children to help her. She's asking them to do 5 things, to pray the rosary. And in the end, and this comes from other different sources, the 2 weapons we have in the end is the Eucharist and the rosary. Because no civilization can stop you from doing those. Hopefully we still get the Eucharist from consecrated priests. But she has 5 stones. If you want to keep the devil as far away from you as you possibly can, she says 5 stones. Pray the rosary, Eucharist, confession, Bible reading, and fasting. And fasting is very important as well. I'll give you a side story about Vishka. So Vishka is one of the visionaries. They showed her here a little earlier. Vishka was taken by the Virgin Mary to purgatory. She was sown the souls in purgatory. And Vishka had tremendous empathy for the people in purgatory. This is in 1987. So she said to the Virgin Mary, I want to do something to help these souls in purgatory. So the Virgin Mary said, through suffering, and suffering is a very important thing and very valuable. If you talk to these visionaries, they'll tell you the value of suffering is very high. She wanted to take some suffering to help the people in the purgatory. So she began getting terrible headaches. She'd go into coma. She had obviously a neurological problem. Was seen by the local doctors. They say you got a problem in your brain, et cetera, et cetera. Interesting too. They always asked the Virgin Mary when, like for example, doing the testing. They asked the Virgin Mary, should we do the testing? When Vishka got to her brain stuff, they want to take her to Zagreb, which is a bigger city that has CAT scans and MRIs so they could diagnose her. She asked the Blessed Mother, should I go to Zagreb? So the point being is that we should always be asking Jesus and Father and our Blessed Mother what we should be doing. They want us to ask them stuff too. So in Vishka's case, the Blessed Mother said, yes, you should go to Zagreb and get it tested. So she went to Zagreb, modern medicine, CT, MRI. A lot of people defined it that she had a brain tumor. She really didn't have a brain tumor. She had a cyst. But the cyst was in the middle of her brain around the pons. There was no way surgically to go get it without killing her trying to get it. So they said it's a terminal problem. You're going to have it forever. So she suffered from 1987 with headaches, going into semi-comas and stuff, until the Virgin Mary told her in January of 88 that she would be cured. So Vishka, on February 4th of 1988, put in 3 letters, a date. She gave them to Bishop Kamaris. She gave them to her confessor, which is Father Blabko, and I'm not sure where the 3rd letter went. These were sealed letters, gave them 3 letters. She told them she'll tell them when they can open the letters. So this was in February 4th, she gave them the letters. On September 25th, she told them that they can all open the letters. This is one of the scientific things from Medjugorje, and there's very many medical miracles here. They opened the letter. She said, on September 25th, 1988, I will be cured of this head tumor. They then opened the letters. She's cured. They said, that can't be. They take her to CT scan, MRI on her. No cyst, no tumor. Completely cured. How does somebody, 7 months in advance, on modern medicine, diagnosed with a mass in her brain that everybody says is there, suddenly is gone on the exact day she says it's going to be gone? How can that be? It can't be. So many other medical miracles similar to Lourdes that we do, but that's probably one of the best documented ones. And again, for the scientific community, you always want as much documentation. Well, that's as high as you can get in that type of documentation. But the point being is, many people that make comments on Medjugorje in terms of medically, scientifically and stuff, they don't know what they're talking about most of the time. And even on the commission, so when Bishop Zanuck was negative towards it and said there's nothing supernatural, eventually Cardinal Ratzinger, the future Pope Benedict, actually took it from the local Mostar and took it to the Congregation of the Faith to decide about Medjugorje, and that was formed, I think, in 2012. In 2017, they approved the first 7 days as supernatural. But here's kind of it's getting a little awkward in terms of this. So the 15 members, and of the 15 members, by the way, there's no doctors. There's no doctors, there's no scientists. There's only cardinals and an anthropologist and some other people, but there's no medical people or scientific on that 15-member board. They vote 13-1 to approve the first 7 days as worthy of approval and supernatural. That was on, I think, April 17th of 2017. One person was against it, and the other person says, I can't decide, but 13 people were for it. And that's what started then the pilgrimages being approved. So before 2017, the pilgrims weren't approved because the local bishop, Zanuck and Perrick, were so much against it. And again, they showed very poor prudence because why would you ever chance being against something that may be of heaven? The consequences would be severe. You should keep an open mind and be prudent and say, I don't know at the best. So it was approved in 2017 and 2019, but Francis has been a bit hostile to it. And I want to read his statement because I don't want to ever misquote somebody, but this is the same sort of thing that it makes me shudder a little bit when people make these type of statements. So when they approved it in 2017, and Francis kind of went along with the kind of commission, but he said, and this is his quote, "I prefer a mother that is not the head of the telegraph office who sends us a message every day." It is extremely mocking. And if the Blessed Mother is appearing there, which she is, I don't think heaven's going to like that statement very much because it's working after what she's trying to do. And the thing about it theologically is, what would you be against? The message from Medjugorje is, again, Bible reading, confession, Eucharist and stuff, etc. What is about it theologically you could possibly be against? There's no theological doctrine that's being contradicted here too, so it's a resistance. And I'll take it back to the Pharisees and stuff as well, where she doesn't appear how he wants his mother to appear. That doesn't make it untrue at all. It makes it just the opposite. Interestingly enough, in the apparitions as well, you saw from Kibiho, I can't say her name very well, Ili, but every apparition is, if the apparition is in Kibiho, the Virgin Mary appears African American in appearance. When she appears in Croatia, she appears Croatian. When she appears in Fatima, she appears French. She appears in Guadalupe, she appears Mexican. And people say, well, that just proves that these apparitions. No. What it proves is you see with the eyes of faith, your mother as your mother would appear to you. Of course you would. That doesn't hurt the case at all. In fact, because if it was the same Jewish mother in each one, I think that'd be worse. I'd be more suspicious. So the fact that they do that on purpose, again, it tells me that it is legitimate, all of those as well. But the point of all these apparitions are, it is a critical time. It goes back to, and I'll tell you another thing, Pope Leo X in 1885, I was just telling people at the table. In 1885, he was in the Sistine Chapel. He fell over. They thought he was dead. He gets up after 15 minutes. He runs to his office and he writes down this prayer. It's the Michael the Archangel prayer. Defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke, we humbly pray. The reason he wrote that down was because in his ecstasy, when they thought he was dead, he said he was transported from the judgment seat of Christ. And Satan appeared to Christ and said, I can destroy your church. I just need enough power over the consecrated souls in particular, and more time, and I can destroy it. And Christ says, you may tempt them. That was 1885. Many people believe in 1917. What the devil didn't know was that Jesus was going to send his mother and to help all of us all in terms of that. And so the reason that we're having so many apparitions is because it is a very critical time in the humanity in terms of the spiritualists. Never before has man been this evil. Abortion through 9 months, World War III, other stuff as well. And it's building, it's not getting less. So she's trying to give you the weapons. What I want to do is give you the weapons to defend your faith. When atheists and other people say these aren't don't believe them. You got to look at the right source, and I will give you the information to defend yourself. And this is what the church really needs to be doing for us, and they're not doing a very good job. Sometimes the church will say, well, this is private revelation. It wasn't private revelations when the apostles watched Jesus walk across the water. It wasn't private revelation when Jesus raised people from the dead, even though only a few people were involved. The reason we believe Christ is God is not because he said he did, it's because what he did. He rose from the dead. He healed people. People that needed to hear were here. People that needed to have sight were sight. He believes because that strengthens our faith. When we see Peter was strengthened in faith because I saw this guy walk across water. He has to be God. And I will die for that. Now, if Christ said I was God, he didn't walk across the water. A little more difficult for Peter to have that strength. So God gives us this revelations to make you strong. He gives you the revelation to defend yourself. He gives you the stones. He gives you the Eucharist. He gives you confession. He gives you Bible reading. He gives you all to defend your souls. The souls today, the 8 billion souls, are in tremendous attack by the demonic. Tremendous. Our church is under tremendous attack within. Apostasy in the church was forecast again by Sister Mariana back in 1520. Another apparition. Said in the 20th century there would be apostasy in the church. You need to defend yourself. You need to say that Eucharistic miracles are true scientifically. Incorruptible saints and bodies are true scientifically. Medjugorje apparitions are true scientifically. These aren't things of faith. They're faith, yes, but they are proven scientifically. Don't listen to the people, the sources that are telling you these things. It's not true. The point again of the apparitions again is to get your soul to heaven and to give you the weapons, the stones to defend yourself, to give you the ability to have this faith and believe in this faith and die for this faith if necessary. But that is where we're in. Virgin Mary says in Medjugorje, it's time for decisions. Joe didn't tell you too much more, but I'll tell you a little bit more about the intent of Medjugorje. You've probably heard about 10 secrets of Medjugorje. People have heard about the secrets of Medjugorje? Okay, so the Virgin Mary, when she gives 10 secrets, they no longer have apparitions anymore. So Mirjana had apparitions for about 1 year, every single day, about 1 year. Ivanka, I think, had 5 years or so. I can't remember. Zhakov was 17 years, I think. And there's 3 that still have apparitions every single day. So the 3 that don't have apparitions have 10 secrets, okay? So Mirjana, back in 1982, the Virgin Mary gave Mirjana from heaven, a notebook that's somewhere between leather and paper. It's beige in color, was given to the Virgin Mary, gave to Mirjana, 1982. It sits on her credenza in her house, okay? Her cousins tried to come and read the 10 secrets, which it contains, but they couldn't read them. They could only read poems or C's or whatever else. The point of those secrets, again, is that these are the last warning from mankind. Fatima was an urgent call. Kibiho is an urgent call for repentance. God is love, but Christ says repent and love. Repent and love. Not that all love is all love if you think it is. That isn't what his message is. It's repent and be perfect as your Father is perfect. Not close. Be perfect as your Father, as pure as you can be, as holy as you can be. Not close, perfect. If we couldn't become perfect, why would he tell us to become perfect? So the secrets on those, we know from other mystics approximately what they are. We know what the third secret is because they've told us. It's a permanent physical sign in apparition hill that is beautiful, indestructible, will occur suddenly, and everyone will know it cannot be from man. It's impossible. The other first 2 secrets I'll just go through them. From other mystic, the first secret is the illumination of the soul. I'll give you all the details. It'll happen probably in April, May, or June. It'll happen between the 8th and 16th on a Thursday, 2:30 Omaha time. It lasts about 15 minutes. Father Petri Lubishe is her confessor, Mirjana. She has chosen him that he will be able to read the first secret when she tells him. Okay, they will fast for 7 days, and 3 days before, Father Petri Lubishe will tell the world what that is. You'll see it on CNN, whatever it is. First is thought to be the illumination of the soul. Other mystics, Padre Pio and other people, have 3 secrets in total. Garbandel has the same sort of secrets. Father Peter has the secrets. and Catherine Emmerich have the same sort of secrets. They all have 3. Medjugorje has 10. Okay? The reason people think Medjugorje has 10 that sit on that parchment is because there's chastisements. The other 3 are illumination of the soul, also called a warning, that everybody will see their soul in front of God the Father in the state it's in. And its destiny at the moment, heaven, hell, or purgatory. The second is to be 6 weeks later, be Christ in the sky. The Savior will heal all bodily, all spiritual, all wounds completely. The third is a permanent physical sign in Medjugorje. We already know that from the other seers as well. The next 7 are chastisements. The third secret they all have in common is 72 hours of darkness. The world will be destroyed by fire. So that's on that parchment that sits in Mirjana's house. This is what this is all building up to. All these apparitions, this is all building up to the same thing. And everybody who's been watching the apparitions for 40 years know our world is in a much closer thing to those secrets becoming real than ever. You've got World War III, you've got the church in a lot of different crises. It's a big problem. The message for you is to have faith in your faith. Do the rosary, do the Eucharist, and all these things, and things will be fine. But that's what it is. That's about all I got.